but because I would like people to realize, I think that Oswald did it. I don't happen to know anything else. But if you look at the root of that, of Kennedy's trip in Dallas, you would find that that spot where it had to turn, slow down to make a sharp right angle turn, and only go a block before you make a sharp turn to the left, and then go down underneath the underpass, was an ideal place if you wanted to kill him. And that was thick in the air. I was afraid to have him come there to Dallas. I'd heard that he'd been well received in Fort Worth, and that was comforting, or alleviated my anxiety somewhat. But it was also thick in the air that people didn't like Kennedy. Too many people didn't like Kennedy. And I'd come to know Lee because some friends of ours with whom we used to sing madrigals back on the East Coast, knew my politics, and that I wasn't happy with the economic system we had here in this country, and asked if I would like to meet a man a GI, I think they called him, a Marine, maybe they said, who came back from the military, left the military. Would I like to meet him? And I was not particularly keen, but yes, I would like to meet him. Oh, he defected. They told me he had defected to the Soviet Union and come back from the Soviet Union. And would I like to meet him? And yes, I would like to meet him. So I did. They introduced me to him. And he was not the man when I went to see him, he got his picture. First he introduced me to his wife and daughter. And
this was
then,
when you were picking them up to come to our house for an evening meal, right? And you went, they didn't have a car, of course, and he couldn't drive, but you went to pick him up, right? And when you walked in, you're saying?
So I walked to his house where he was, and he was at the top of the stairway, so I had to walk up the stairway, and he was on the second floor, his apartment. And he showed me, as soon as he had introduced me to Marina and his daughter, they left, they went back about their business to gather things she would want to bring to the house, to our house for a meal. Gosh, I'm a little confused here.
Okay. He showed you a photograph.
Anyway, yes, I remember that, but I can't remember just why I didn't remember that we had invited him or something like that, or as a way to, there must have been something more that went on before. But, so anyway, he as soon as we were just the two of us, he showed me this picture of himself, 8 by 10 by 8 by 10, glossy black and white photograph that he had taken. He was working in a photo shop, I think, at the time, and so he used the man's shop to develop his own picture. And there he was with his rifle angled across him, holding his rifle, and in his hand, his left hand, and in the same hand there were two white things sticking up there, sort of like that napkin or something like that. I couldn't see what they were, and he said they were the newspapers he liked. The Worker, I believe, and the Militant. And then I asked him soon, why didn't he like the Soviet Union? Why did he come back from the Soviet Union? And he said, well, you couldn't own a gun there. And when I heard him say that, what a boring, a disappointing answer as to why he didn't like the Soviet Union. He was not someone I was hoping he would want a different economic system. And that was what I wanted to talk about. I would have been interested to talk about how to make our livelihood in a way that enabled people to do it, not have so many impoverished people. And that's the thing that I would like people to recognize, that here was a man. I've heard people say that he worked for the CIA or the FBI, I think, and I immediately thought, if that was true, it was because he wanted to infiltrate those things and spy on them. He really hated everything about the government. And what he hated, I think, was any control over him. And he didn't like the Soviet Union, I think, was because he wasn't allowed to have a gun. Stupid, but he's being confined by that society. So I wanted people to realize that here was an instance that man, we didn't know at the time that he had already killed somebody, but if he had
to kill somebody. Had tried to kill somebody.
Yes, well, and planned it for a week, so he was capable of doing it. Well, we didn't have that information at that time about that. It was evident to me that he was quite a deliberate. He was not stupid, and he didn't care about people very much, I think. He played with his daughter, but I thought he did it a little awkwardly and was learning. He liked it. He seemed to like it, and it was suggested that Marina come and live with us. I was thinking he'd like that. It would take the load off him we don't expect to get any compensation for it, and it didn't cost us anything more. Ruth and I were kind of separating, and so she'd be paying. I was living in a different apartment, and it would reduce our it would reduce her costs. She wouldn't have to pay for babysitters. So I think the cost of Marina living with Ruth was negligible. I never talk to you about what the actual. It just wasn't an important issue, and it just wasn't a big cost to us. I was dividing my money with Ruth. So I wanted the world to know that that was the existence of a person who wanted to kill him, the president. Oh, people asked me, so why do you want? He had said to me something that Kennedy was his favorite president. And I think it was not in the same half hour, but he'd also said, the only way that change will come about is through violence. So those two things were, how could a man kill somebody, a president, his favorite president? And it was because he didn't love anybody. except for his daughter, possibly his wife. But he thought he cared very much about the government he was under, so-called democracy.
Was Oswald involved actively in communist groups when he was living with you? Did you know?
No, I don't believe so. But I don't know what he was doing. So I knew I didn't know what he was doing, but I did know that he. And it wasn't until he was after the assassination. I can't now remember. It came up then that he had. Became known that he had planned to kill, and shot at, without success, General Walker, Edwin Walker. I do remember in the newspaper General Walker having been shot at, and wondered what it was like for him to be living in the same city where his assailant, somebody who wanted him dead, was still alive, walking around unapprehended.
Well, I always found it interesting that you reported that Oswald referred to those two newspapers, the Militant and the Worker, and said, if you read between the lines.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Was he connected is the question with any real group.
What did he read between the lines as to who was they? What did they want?
What they want you to do. Yeah. I mean, and when he tried to do the connection with the Fair Play for Cuba group, it was pretty clear, at least the Warren Commission was able to find out there wasn't a Fair Play for Cuba group in New Orleans. He was it. And so he was trying to get a group or do something, but he just really didn't seem associated with others.
He thought he was part of the struggle, the communist struggle, but he was kind of out on his own.
Yeah. Oh, well.
I've been meaning to write more about it. And now I see in this discussion even, my memory is getting bad. Oh, I thought I think I told you, I thought I should not come here because most likely problem I was going to have would be loss of memory. And it did happen to my mother, but over a period of 10 years. People were very reluctant, she was reluctant to call it Alzheimer's because it was so pejorative or so scary to people. They didn't. People didn't want to admit that it might be. And she was very different from the man across the street. Died of Alzheimer's, only about a year. So I saw her very fast. Had experience. I didn't know him, but I was across the street from where we were living, where I was living. It's triggered by other events around it or such environments. Mm-hmm. And here I've had so many of them. I'm just trying to say that that's part of the reason my memory's so bad right now.
Yeah, it'd probably be valuable for history for you to write down all the memories you have.
Yes, it would. I just hate to write. I flunked out of college because I didn't have a paper.
Did you ever think of writing a book?
Pardon?
Did you ever think of writing a book?
I was grateful to Thomas Mellon for taking care of that for me.
Yeah.
I was not interested.
bigger conspiracy. It was one person who saw he had that opportunity. If he'd been planning it the way he did for General Walker, he would have taken more time. He would have had the rifle at his house instead of having to come out to Irving and get a ride back in. It was a stupid thing. He wouldn't have done. He would have had the rifle in his hand, in his possession, where he was living. If he'd had the idea for more than a day, that after he saw the path of the place going right by where he was working. So I think only then did it occur to him that he could. And even though he thought he was the best president, he would not have given he took his rifle. Clearly that he came the night before and got his rifle and had to, that was an unusual thing. It was not supposed to come except on the weekends. He would clearly have done that if he'd been planning to do this. But I think I concluded he hadn't planned to do this until he saw that was his opportunity to do it. It was being presented to him by the Ruth President coming right past where he was working every day. And that was the thing that was most convincing to me, that he had left the rifle at my house if he didn't have any plans to kill the president. Just he would not have left it, so he had to get somebody to drive him out to my house time he's not supposed to come, and drive him back with the rifle on that day. So that fact was the first thing that made me think this was not planned. He did it on the spur of the moment because he could. And why did he do it? Because he wanted to be, here he has shot the President of the United States, the biggest so-called democracy in the world. That's going to go down in history. And he was the one who did it. So he didn't have chance even to think about what would happen after that. And so it was, when it happened, and I heard over the radio that Officer Tippit had been shot by a man called Oswald. I immediately, I thought people had asked me whether I thought he had done that or something. I'm again forgetting the details of it. But it was only after I heard that it was Oswald had shot Officer Tippit that I didn't doubt that was Lee. And I would like people to realize that it was not, I didn't believe it was, that he was connected to any group. And I didn't believe that he would give his rifle to someone else to get the honor of shooting the President of the United States. So it was, he had been feeling neglected, Oswald had been feeling neglected and unappreciated, well, maybe those two were enough to cover but he felt them strongly. And there was a chance to rectify history, that he was not unimportant, he was powerful, and he could make an influence. And he did. He succeeded in doing that. Yeah.
He sure did, and we're still talking about it here 50 years later.
And it's not clear, that people still are attracted to the idea that it was a conspiracy. But when you compare it then with what we then came to know about that he had planned to shoot General Walker and had fired the shot, and it missed. But the story that I heard, remembered, was that Walker said he'd reached for a piece of paper on the floor when the bullet hit the window. And very reasonably, of course, he wouldn't have gotten up from when he was struck down. He would not have got up, and Lee would have thought that he'd succeeded until he heard on the radio that he hadn't. Yeah.
What of the people, these theorists out there, who accuse you and Ruth of somehow being part of the plot? What do you think of that?
Oh, I was totally unbothered by that, because I thought we could demonstrate that would come out in the. I was looking forward. Oh yes, when he said, what was his alibi? I was a patsy. I saw him that on the radio, on the TV that night, saying I was a patsy. And I thought to myself, what the hell? How is he going to defend himself with that argument? And then I thought more recently, I guess, I should have been writing these things down. There was some reason why oh yes, I'm a little cautious to mention this. I thought without a doubt that he had shot him, but I also thought that place and that time would be the ideal for anyone who wanted to shoot him. I'd been worried about some right-wing group doing it, and here was a left-wing impulse. So if there had been a group, they would have done it at the same time, so it would have come within seconds of when he shot. He made his shot. So there could have been, if there, I was just thinking about it, it was not totally unreasonable. If there was a totally different group that wanted to get Kennedy killed, they would have chosen that time, and just when he was going, he could have been on two different streets. I think he probably was following Kennedy, and he was also following Kennedy through his 4-power telescopic sight there, so he would know exactly whether his shot had killed Kennedy or somebody else's shot. And that was the thing I thought more recently, in the past year. If there had been another person, he would have known about it. He would have seen it wasn't his shot, and Kennedy was killed, was shot. So he would know that there had been another group, and here he was being the only one who was being being fingered out as, you're the one. And he knew that he was not the only one. If that was true, he could have said he was a patsy. It's not a totally inappropriate statement. So that's been, I don't want to, it still remains true that the act could have been accomplished by one person. It didn't need to have, that could have been a figment of he didn't see him being shot by somebody else. But if he had, that argument would have been right there for him. He would have felt it. And so as I was thinking it recently, I realized, and I hadn't thought about it at the time very much, but I realized in rethinking it that if that had been the case, that argument would have been accurate. The statement would have been accurate. And I think he did it. He intended to do it, and he had almost succeeded with Walker. So it was not. People have been saying, but there was no previous evidence that he was a vicious man or had done that kind of thing, and that was totally untrue. He had just a few months ago, prior. So it's totally reasonable that he should have. There was no reason to say that it was too far out of character for him to have shot Kennedy. And I wanted people to realize that is, and always will be, a terrible vulnerability, and it has been. I mean, presidents used to be able to mingle with the people much more openly than is possible today because of that danger. Well, it hasn't really, I haven't suffered in any way from it.
Yeah.
And I was never afraid of it because it was so, it seemed to me, my history and my involvement, I just was unafraid of. People were making those statements quite reasonably. They could think that, not knowing anything about me or Ruth. And I was totally unafraid of that. And I didn't suffer. I can't think of in any big way. Apparently I didn't realize that I asked to be protected. Oh, I've forgotten again. Apparently I've read that I was asking for police protection. I don't remember having asked for police protection. I was concerned that there were people cruising around the house in Irving. Cars were cruising around the block where we were living. So it would not have, I shouldn't say we were living, my house, but I'd moved out to an apartment, and Ruth and Marina were living there.
Well, we should probably rejoin Ruth here. She's wondering what happened to us.
Yes,
But
yes, by all
thank
means.
you so much for sharing, and we'll probably be back at some point, maybe later this month or in January.
Anytime.
And we
Because
might,
I would like to
yeah.
have it sufficiently clear to the American public somehow that how it did happen. Well, I don't, how I think it happened. I don't know about any other group. I have no. The only thing I mentioned there, why I was trying to figure out how did he come up with that about being a patsy, and that seemed like a very. I realized that he would have been watching the president all that time, so he would have known, without a doubt, what had happened.
Can I take this piece out there? This is stuff.
You would take it. It's cooling off. I'm gonna eat it.
Okay, thank you, Michael.
You're welcome.
He's a friend of Priscilla's. He's been studying this whole thing for a long, long time. Sorry to be interesting.
Always, you know, this is always fascinating.
You might want to look at this. Max sent me this. He has, remember the book 6 Seconds in Dallas that you thought was quite convincing? And he explains why that was an error. And did you get the chance to read any of this? No.
I glanced at it, yeah.
What?
I glanced at it,
Yeah, it was, but then Max very kindly sent me a hard copy, which is a great help. So read it, don't lose it.
Okay.
Because
Yes.
I think Max is on the forefront of really getting the story straight. Because he's looking at how the Warren Commission got it wrong, they missed stuff. They worked hard, but they got some things wrong and left things out. I didn't know things I didn't know. So if people will listen, and this is pretty good coverage, they'll get a lot better information.
Yeah, and that raises another thing for me, the expectation of a conspiracy grew with that sparked it all. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it hasn't diminished. It's been a continuing, and I think with the expectation that it could or something like that might, has made it more possible for it to happen because,
Ooh.
yeah, it's, you know.
Well, anyway, give it back.
Yes, I will. I might almost remind me.
All right, I will.
Yeah. I don't throw them away, but I. Yeah.
Well, it took me a while to find it. Finding things has become a problem.